is be true to what you said on paper.
Well, welcome back to At the Round Table with Family. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. In studio, Dr. Bradley is off today. So we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Rate Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. Like I was saying in early hours, folks, if you want to change, you have to be the change agent. If you're waiting for politicians to better your life, I learned a long time ago, you are just wasting your time. Okay, and time is something we don't have an unlimited amount of. So, like I said, we complain. The time you're spending complaining about what your politicians, find somebody else that can do a better job. Get behind that person, and then hold them accountable. We always ask people to step up, but yet we don't step up. We don't help financially with the campaign. We don't even volunteer. Not always financially, volunteering, getting out there to do something to help better not just their situation but your situation. Like I said, I feel right now we have a city council, for the most part, not all, but the vast majority of them are just grandstanding. Like I said, what I'm seeing is more interviewing for a moment on Jerry Springer than it is about any real serious content of moving this city forward and dealing with the real serious problems that we're having here that affect these communities of color in particular with their actions. It's really shameful. It's shameful, and it needs to stop. With that said, we have a call online. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table.
Good morning. What did I walk into?
Oh, well, something in your wheelhouse. My brother, Darren Howard, is on the line, and that is my brother, my little brother. Just talking about, Darren, folks always, you ran for office, I supported you at the time, and I support you always. I met you. You're one of the people, you worked in Chuck Turner's office, the late Chuck Turner. You understand constituent services, and that's why I supported your run for state rep, because I knew that the community would be getting someone who understood their plight, someone who could relate to their situation. Now, we continue to elect people, and not only elect them, but re-elect them and stand by, and we complain that they're not meeting our needs. Like they said, you get the government you deserve. I asked them, what are you doing to replace them? Well, it doesn't vote. It doesn't matter. Okay. Then stop complaining. Stop complaining.
Right. You're right in regards to, just some of the things. I was listening to the earlier segment, and good morning, listeners. Thank you for allowing me to be on the airways. Shout out to Boston Praise Radio and all that you do for the community with keeping folks informed. But you're right. Power concedes nothing without a demand, right? And a lot of the unfortunate social ills that have been experienced, we've seen clearly an uptick in the violence, and there's been a unfortunate not too much noise is being amplified around what we should be doing to address the issue, what resources are needed to alleviate the problem, and really having that solution-driven conversation with those that really intimately understand the issue that's at play. I think that's also that's a sign of good leadership, that I do not look at the current body of electeds in a way where I looked at violence as being one of the top tier issues that they ran their campaign and candidacy on. I think everyone has touched on it in terms of how they would like to see, but it wasn't one of the top three issues that they campaigned on. It was, climate justice, it was jobs, but violence, I want to say a lot of electeds have stayed away from for probably some genuine reasons, not really an understanding, not a personal necessarily experience with it, so don't know how to comment, right? But it doesn't mean a good leader wouldn't look for those that can comment and provide some healing, support, direction on how to address some of the
No,
social ills.
you're spot on as usual, Darren. We didn't have a George Floyd problem here in Massachusetts. Do we have it right 100% with law enforcement? No. Do we need some things we need to be changed? Absolutely. And as I alluded to, like I said, some recent court decisions talking about discrimination for black police officers inside law enforcement here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And again, silence. So if elected officials don't see this as a problem, if you're as part of the problem with law enforcement, if you have a system that is discriminatory against those who are on the inside, and you're saying and doing nothing to address that, then why do you think it doesn't spill out to the public, and how they're treated? If you're saying that's a problem, and we've identified through the lawsuits, the many that I filed, and this is just one more of them that I've filed on behalf of Mamleo and its members that brought attention to this, right? And yet, I haven't heard from any elected official saying, hey, I've seen this, and how can we help, and what can we do? Because this is appalling. I mean, this judge's decision, the 75 pages, Darren, really eviscerated anything that said there was any real legitimacy to this testing. But also that if our schools are in disarray, and we have a residency issue here in Boston, and we're saying that this is stacked against them, and most of these kids are not even graduating with the level of competency to have them with a diploma, how are we going to get them to take any type of exams in the police or the fire or any type of exam of getting into a college, right? We're not preparing them, and yet folks run on the premise that they are going to fix our problems. And no one person is going to do that. But we don't hold folks accountable for their actions or inactions. And those who do or have a plan, they don't get elected.
You're right in so many different ways, especially around the inaction, right? I think one thing that I kind of pride myself on is being willing to explore to find out what is going to happen, right? So you have to step up, and stepping up requires physical action. What are you saying? Or in this case, what is not being said? When things are revealed, especially through the government that we currently have, right? This decision that came out, there's always going to be some residual and trickle down effects that impact the overall success of the job at hand. So if you recognize that this exam has created a lack of opportunity for those in the community that look like those that they are looking to police or be in these type of public service positions, then you can understand the challenges that have continued to be brought up when issues arise.
Exactly.
So I'm glad to see that
you've
been able to successfully get this one across. But how long did it take, right? And what was going on in the window of time between filing and the the overturning?
Right. To that point, several points you bring up that make one, like I said, it's no different than a kid that is taking the test for, say, the exam schools, right? And they're not preparing our kids to do that, right? So they're not going to get into an exam school. Doesn't mean that they can't function there. It just means that this is not really going to extract what they're going to need. Once they get there, you can prepare them. It's the same thing with these exams, right? You have to then, once you pass this test, no one then, okay, they're going to, when they get to your name, they don't just promote you. They send you to the academy for the real training that you need. So this is what Judge saying. This absolutely makes no sense or little at all. But when I was president of Mamleo, Darren, because we spent a lot of time. You were early on. You were still in Counselor Turner's office. We were working on the unsolved murders here in the city of Boston, right? You were the catalyst in leading that. But I bring all this up to say that we brought these issues to our elected officials, and we continue to bring them, saying, "Hey, look, why don't you guys, before someone says that what you're doing is discrimination, why don't you all be proactive in trying to deal with these matters, right?" And we get crickets. Well, no, it's working. We don't want to upset the apple cart, and some other folks might be upset about it. Well, because they're benefiting from it. So why would you want to change a system that you can game, that works for you, right? Same thing with the drug test. I inherited that when I was president of Mamleo, and it took me another 9 years of my presidency finally to get a test that everyone. When right off the bat, it said that the test had an adverse impact just because of the genetic makeup of our hair, right? Those of us who can grow it, right? And I'm not one of them. That you can, that you could have a false positive. Why would you go with a testing in that caliber? The other thing is that we are still abiding by a standard of. Are you familiar with the St. Clair's report, Darren?
Yep.
Okay, so the St. Clair's report was for folks who don't know out there. Charles Stewart, who several years back in the 90s murdered his wife and unborn child, and once he was revealed that he did, he blamed it on a black man over in Mission Hill. Found out Willie Bennett found out that was not the case. Once it was revealed that he did it and his brother helped him cover it up, he jumped to his death on the Tobin Bridge. They came up with a study with that, the St. Clair's report. In that St. Clair's report, it was a recommendation, and just that, a recommendation that no one below the rank of lieutenant be promoted to the command staff level in the Boston Police Department. At the time, we had no lieutenants of color, right? So already something that someone had done to their wife and blamed the black person. Now we're going to be punished even more, because that meant that now we're going to shorten the span of people who could be elevated to a leadership role in the Boston Police Department, people of color. That's what you want to embrace right off the bat. It said it was racism, discriminatory, but that's what they've been adapting that standard for the longest time. And now you reveal that even if you do pass this testing, it's not going to yield what you want as well, because it's discriminatory on its surface, and now it's been exposed. And in fact, I don't know if you saw the fire department, the state just said, hey. Because to me, it's almost like an admission of guilt. Well, if you thought you could stand by your test, then go ahead and have it, because it even though it's packaged different, it's the same standard that you're applying here that they did for the police exam. And this is statewide, because this is civil service but again, it go back to our elected officials, the crickets of how do you see this and ignore it, because no one wants to take it on, because it's a political hotbed. But if you're elected, that's what you're supposed to be doing. I can't decide if the call dispatcher gives me a call with a person with a gun. I can't say, hey, I don't want to deal with that call. I might get hurt. I have to take it.
I think, and I've been saying this a lot more lately, that any true meaningful change is going to have to involve some level of discomfort, right? Somebody's going to feel uncomfortable because they have been benefiting from the status quo, right? So in order to there has to be some disruption, right? I know when you were talking earlier around T. Michaels and his advocacy for the program that he's been running for so many years, and the results and not being properly supported in a way that you can see the meaningful change that could happen.
Right.
But you have to disrupt things, and that's one of the things that I am blessed to have experienced, as someone that was a disruptor, someone that would interrupt the status quo and bring about light to issues that was clearly present that people were not willing to speak up on because of where they may be placed or the relationship that may be impacted by them. Something they know needs to be said. So I think that we've been missing that for some time now, is having those disruptors, someone that's not necessarily saying, I like this person as a person, but when it comes to the job of service, not necessarily a thankful job. It's about, getting, doing work that's going to benefit a massive amount of people versus individuals. And I think that it's been missing for some time.
Right.
That people have not felt comfortable disrupting the relationship that may exist with their counterparts.
Right.
To say, hey, we're all human.
Right.
And unfortunately, you're in this role that allows you to address this issue. And it seems that you might need some support. You might have been missing your voice, but it's been a unfortunate silence around the social ills that have been impacting our community. And I know you asked me to join. Yeah. Because of the holiday.
Right. But it's hard for us, right? No, and like I said, we're going to get to that. But you're right. This is just as equally important, because I think it also impacts that, right? It's the why that support for I know you called to talk about Toys for Tots. Is that why?
No. I was going to ask. That's the reason why the event is really been explored for the last 14 years, is because we all know during the holiday season, it's difficult time, especially for those that have loved ones no longer around the table.
Right.
And hurt people. Right. And you don't want people hurting people. Right. So the idea is to try to create an environment that allows you to to a degree, distract you from that pain and trauma that might have been experienced during the holidays.
Right, and you probably have had one of the largest. Like I said, we're going to get into you're actually one of the folks, it's a super volunteer, I think you call yourself, for Toys for Tots, right? And so you started that out with Drive Boston, and you were doing that to help families who are incarcerated children, to help them have a good trip because their family member, their parent may be behind the walls, right? And that they should not be punished for that. And you came to me at Mamleo. You and I had built a relationship prior to that. But see, this is what most people would see: uncommon people working together for a common cause, right? And you asked, could you use, and you outgrew Mamleo space, but that was the first, I believe, it was the first location where you held one of these events. It was successful. Those are the type of relationships and partnerships that we have to get back to. What works, right, is that it can't just be about my issue, right? And that was one of the things I always highlighted and was very proud of, was and stood for, was working with the community as the president of Mamleo. One of the things that we continue to do today. It doesn't work us against them. It doesn't work if we're saying we're in the community and we're not actually involved in the community, right? Not just we have an office there, right? And that office is closed most of the time, and we don't spend a lot of physical time in it. We spend more time in the community. So I guess, Darren, how do we get back to that, my brother? Because I think that's what we've lost sight of, and we don't hold people accountable because we don't understand what accountability is.
You're right. It's been missing that sense of community. I feel like it has broken out into small islands in the community. People work in their silos. They're clicked up, and to recognize that there's ceilings when you approach the work that way, right? If there's a roof versus skies is the limit when you're working together, right? The opportunities could be endless when people collectively come together. But as long as folks continue to lead with ego, lead with look at me, look what I'm doing, versus look at what is being done, right? Let's look at what is being accomplished. And one thing I appreciated about the leadership and mentorship of the late Honorable Chuck Turner was that he was his humility was ever present at all times. His humbleness was ever present. He knew what impact he was having on others, but he never let that go to his head. He always made sure he recognized everyone's contribution, and only looked to interact with those that was looking to address the issue that was being discussed. We're saying that there's room at the table for anyone that wants to be at the table for service, but how do we work together to resolve this issue? And I think that becomes a lot of the issue, is that people are there get in the way of themselves.
No, you're right.
I don't try to do what the police do, and you don't try to do what I've done. But when we work together, we show a powerful presence to those that are looking.
And that's the key to it, right? Like I said, you call me issues, I call you issues, right? The first time I met you, because there was a young man that I knew I couldn't help, right? But I came down, and this was during all this investigation with Counselor Turner at the time, that people said, man, they're not going to be receptive for the I said, well, I still have to try, because it isn't about me. It's not about my feelings. If they say no, they say no. But this young man needs help. I feel like they're the appropriate people that can help him. I've heard you. I had never met you before. I'd heard you on I think it was Touch at the time, talking about, I'm like, he seems like the right man. And that's where our relationship was. I wasn't afraid to try something different because I didn't have the answers, right? And Counselor Turner was probably one of the most humble and most intelligent people. But you're right. I mean, you would never know he was as educated as he was, because he didn't wear that on his shoulders. It was not to help him as much as it was to help his constituents. And that said, Darren, stand by for a second, because I think his partner in that is on the other line, and we'll give him a few minutes because it's someone in his mirrored image in that regard. And with that missing piece, is Counselor Yancey, I'm told, is on the other line. Good morning, sir. It is quite a pleasure to hear from you.
Good morning. I'm calling just to echo what has already been said about Chuck Turner, and also to thank Darren Howell for the work that he's doing with young people. To remind him that if you need some books, I still have an inventory of books for your various efforts to help educate our community. Chuck Turner never got the credit that he deserved.
No, but he got the criticism.
Yes, he got the criticism, but not the credit. He was committed to our community. He had an undying love for the community, and I had the honor of working with him many years before 1999 when he was elected as my partner in the Boston City Council. He was on the board of directors and executive director of several community efforts going back to the 70s and perhaps even the 60s.
Yeah.
And when I worked with the Circle Venture Capital Fund, which later became the Greater Roxbury Development Corporation, he was there as well on the board of directors, and we built the 2-story office building, which now contains the Urban League. But at that time, the building was constructed to lease to the telephone company. But the beauty of that project, that was one of my first projects in 1974, was that it was developed by an all-black team. John Cruz Construction built it. We had Stellan Lee as the architect. We had United Brokers as the insurance agent for the building. We had Unity Bank and Trust providing the construction financing. And it was a successful project. But it was also an effort on the part of Chuck Turner and others on the board of directors to indicate how important it was to collaborate and to build an economic structure that benefited people in the community.
Right, but go ahead. No, I was going to say, because what you bring up some very interesting points. And to that point, you and as well as Councilor Turner had I wouldn't say issues. You had some disagreements with the police, right? But it was always in a respectful way. You never saw us as the enemy. You always saw us as accountable, right? What I'm seeing now, you both would be just disturbed and just appalled at there is this, especially our councils of color, that there is this whole blanket indictment on all of us that are in law enforcement and taking nothing into consideration that those of us who are fighting from the inside, fighting the same thing. And you guys teamed up with us to work with us to try to root out these problems and to make a better police department, better first responders. It's just the opposite now. It's like I'm watching Jerry Springer with our...
It's really unfortunate. Yes, I was very critical of city government in general and the police department specifically.
Right.
But not the individual police officers.
It's personal now, right?
All my remarks concerning the police department by honoring the commitment of individuals who put on that uniform and make a target of themselves, really, and recognize that the police officers do risk their lives to protect the public. After prefacing my remarks with respect for the police officers, I do point out that we should never tolerate anyone in the police department who does not respect the community.
Right.
And we challenged them when we saw many instances. And I think the incidents of police abuse actually went down during my term on the city council. I remember Boston City Councilor Mike McCormick commenting to me at one point early in the 80s where he was very friendly with a lot of officers, mostly white officers in the police department. And he said whenever I was in the community that a message would go out through the radio, say, be on your best behavior, Councilor Yancey's out there. And I was flattered by that. I didn't tell Mike that I was, but I think it's important to ensure that our police officers actually work for the community. And I know of many police officers, white as well as black and Latino and Asians, who did. I know of some in all those categories who did not, and who were abusing their powers. So I think it's important that we recognize that police officers are human beings, that they do risk their lives every day, whether they know it or not, conscious of it every hour of the day. But I do recognize that. But that does not mean that our community should go without the protection that the police are supposed to provide. And that does not mean that we should tolerate any racist police officers or sexist police officers. in the public employee as officers.
Absolutely, but I'm saying this blanket indictment that I'm seeing, unfortunately, with predominantly our consuls of color, that anyone who darns the uniform or wears a badge is in that category of, and I'm like, you're losing sight of those of us who are on the inside, still trying to maintain exactly what you said, accountability, and from the inside, you actually hurt our cause because people think we're all in this effort. There are some, and we've been trying to weed them out. We hold them accountable. There's been some changes. I serve as one of the commissioners on the post for police oversight, standing and training. The certification of law enforcement is something we never had that we have the first of. So we're taking steps, but we've been in this fight. But what was different, like I said, we had allies in your office, Councilor Turner's office, right? We don't have that anymore. We don't have anyone down there that we can call and say, hey, look, there's an issue, or this decision just came out from the courts. What are you guys going to do about it? Are you even going to have a hearing to address something as important as this? You're talking about rats in the South End, or you're talking about, no problem with, the pay detail. And it's just this back and forth of anything that's adversarial rather than really being something that's going to move the needle, that's going to really help our communities in a meaningful way. And
that's unfortunate that the current city council may be insensitive to the fact that we do have human beings as police officers. They deserve respect and support, at the same time requiring accountability and service.
Yeah.
I saw no contradiction in the work that I did around that area. And let me also say that Mamleo was one of our partners during our annual book fairs, and they made a tremendous difference in terms of the functioning of the book fair that ran for 30 years and distributed more than 700,000 books. You were there helping managing the crowds, and I appreciate it. But it also benefited the officers who came out
absolutely
to see the community in a non-threatening manner.
Right.
And to realize that the community residents deserve as much protection as people in downtown with millions of dollars in assets.
But Council, so, we didn't see our differences as us being enemies, and that's where folks don't understand. That's where I guess not having adults in the room now in these situations where we can differ on an opinion about an issue, and that's okay. But there are so many other things that we can work on. That's why I still have this brotherly, like I said, something with Darren that started out in a time when he could have said, hey, I'm not even talking to anybody to the police. Y'all didn't come down here, raided my office, arrested my boss. I have nothing, he thought more about that young man who I needed help from. That showed me his character. That showed me what that office was about. This had nothing to do with it. And I wasn't there looking for anything except help for this young man. And he provided that. And this is what's missing. Like, there's no one there I could call right now because your office isn't there. I look at a lot of people that worked in you. Same thing with Councilor Turner's office. I look at the trajectory of those folks that worked in your office. I see them doing great things, right? Sagoon comes to matter, and Kevin Peterson, Darren, the list goes on. And these other folks, it's just a job. It's just a job.
Lorraine folks.
I was trying to remember her name. Yes. Absolutely.
Lorraine worked in Chuck's office as well as in mine.
Yeah, exactly.
She had a great heart for the community.
Yeah, she did. So, Darren.
The only thing I would say, and I'll let you get back to your discussion, is that we should not paint a broad brush against all the city council.
No, I'm not.
Or against the police officers. We have a lot of work to do, but we do have to improve the level of communication.
Yes, we do.
And I will give Michael Cox a call and suggest that we sit down because there's a lot of history there.
Right.
And I believe that he has to continue to reach out and do a better job reaching out to community. I would love to hear him on your program one Saturday morning to discuss some of the challenges and to have him solicit support from the community as well as make a commitment to ensure that the police department of 2022 is significantly better than the police department that he worked in and that abused him physically.
Right.
many, many years ago. So he certainly is in a position to empathize with those who do feel either neglected or abused by city government. And the police officers represent city government as well as protecting the public.
We're probably the most interactive with community, unfortunately, a lot of times, but not for reasons of people in distress, but then anyone. We respond to any and all calls. We don't get to vet. We don't close at 5:00. No, we're there 24 hours a day. Well,
I did want to talk about the political situation in this country and in this state and in the city, but I don't want to monopolize discussion.
No, Darren, how much time you have, brother?
Listening to you every Saturday morning, even if you're not there.
Yeah.
Even if every once in a while, I'm tempted to call when you have a recorded program without realizing it.
You like others.
You do a tremendous service to us, and I want you to know that a lot of us appreciate the sacrifices that you're making, Larry Ellison, by simply showing up every Saturday morning.
Well, I appreciate that, but like I said, it really isn't a sacrifice. It's really a duty and obligation from what I've been taught and what I've learned from people that came before me and what they sacrificed. They're the ones who sacrificed, because it's really, I don't have the same impediments that they did, right? Where they were risking lives just trying to get truth out to us. And I said, shame on us if we sit back and not utilize the voice that has been given to us that people want to take away. So I appreciate you acknowledging that, but this really isn't difficult for me.
Right, and I'm very optimistic about the future. I think young people demonstrating a higher level of consciousness than some of their predecessors. I'm impressed with a young man from Orlando, Florida, at 25 years old, and elected to the United States Congress. I tried 3 times for Congress, didn't make it. But I'm also impressed by Mandela Barnes, who came close to being elected to the U.S. Senate out of Wisconsin. And, of course, we have a sister down in Florida who should have...
Yeah, Val Demings,
yes, and we also had a sister out of North Carolina who should have been elected to the U.S. Senate.
Judge there,
And now we're faced with that situation down in Georgia. Warnock should be reelected, and we should do what we can.
Yeah, hopefully, I don't know, Arizona's still, Nevada's still, close, so hopefully.
Right, Nevada, that would be very important.
Absolutely.
And then we can work with the Biden administration again and nudge them and really pressure them to do even more. I know they've been working the best they can, but we have our own state government, and we should, again, I congratulate all of the elected officials who were successful and those who were not successful but at least ran. And that includes Andrea Campbell, who unseated me many years ago. I want to congratulate her election as Attorney General. Look forward to working with Maura Haley as our new governor and all the other constitutional officers. It's historic in Massachusetts to have basically all female, with the exception of the Secretary of State, replacing white males who have monopolized power for far too long. Now it's time to share the power with women and people of color and make sure they have the support they need to carry out a radically different agenda that's more sensitive to the needs of those folks who have been ignored or even abused by the system.
Well, Counselor, thank you so much. It's always important to hear from you. Go ahead, Darren.
Before you jump off, I do want to say thank you for leading the way. Your 30-plus years elected as a city councilor didn't go unnoticed.
Still doesn't.
Your voice is, from me to you, truly missed. I would have hoped that you could have even been some sort of advisor to really what could be, given the changes that have occurred in our city with so many people. Just your history, your wealth of knowledge. And I also want you to know that because of you and the annual book fair, was my motivation around the annual holiday event that I've been doing for years, that I actually can imagine reaching the level that you were able to reach with your community give back, that I'm still embarking on. So thank you, appreciate you, and again, you are missed in the
sorely
missed in the public arena.
Well, thank you very much, and I know that there's a young man by the name of Clement Howell was very proud of his son.
His mom, they were beaming the other day when they came in to vote. You know, we had quite an extensive talk, and how we're all proud of Darren. I mean, like I said, I'm proud to call him my little brother. And if you think about our paths, no one would know that Darren had gone, because he shares. I'm not putting his business out there. He shares that with people because that's an important part of him. But the fact that he and I could be as close as we are today, that I call him my brother, that speaks to how you build relationships. Right?
That's right.
Uncommon people become one. That's what works, and that's where the trust comes in. That's why I get the calls I get, because I built these relationships with people, not because they see me better than anybody. People will talk to people they trust.
Well, keep up the great work, and let's make some exciting things happen for 2023.
Sounds good. Thank you, Counselor. Continue to listen. Appreciate you, sir. Right. Have a good holiday.
Yep. Yeah, definitely enjoy hearing the voice. Thanks for including them in on this discussion. Yeah. Looking forward to those views around, the status of the nation.
Yeah.
I think that definitely is a conversation worth having. But as you alluded to, there's
I know.
stuff going right.
Right. And I know, Darren, thank you for giving us that time on this other most important topic. But I know I had asked you to call in because, I've been working with you and continue to, and was at a meeting with you the other day, something that's near and dear, important, started with, like I said, your own personal organization, working with Drive Boston. And now you've really, you've taken, like I said, you're a super volunteer, but you're really kind of running things with this Toys for Tots. And the significance of that as well, as people don't understand, and they should know. And I'm going to say it for you because you don't get enough credit for the work that you do. With everything that's going on your plate, this is time most people, when they get to the status of the level or the busyness that you are doing, they will then shun these things and put it off on somebody else because they're just too busy. With all you have going on in your life, you are still as active as you are in giving back. That says something about your character. So I want to personally thank you for that, and like I said, while you're here today to talk about Toys for Tots, in which you are a super volunteer for, and how it gives folks a little backstory on that and where it is today and how folks can be helpful and supportive of the efforts.
Oh, definitely, and thank you for that. I kind of put that title on myself of super volunteer because I don't ever want to have any misinterpretation of why I'm involved. This is not a paid thing. This is not something that, I'm being compensated, other than the joy that comes from the actual activity of what's being done. About 14 years ago, I was informed that Toys for Tots was the hub that provided, gifts to organizations that service various communities. They only provided it to nonprofit organizations and at the time, I knew I was doing a lot of work with men that were locked up. I was doing a lot of work with men that were coming home from incarceration, and just knew what the families could possibly use. Was like, hey, if there's a way for Toys for Tots to provide me as an individual with toys to give back, that would be great. Found out that they do not provide individuals with gifts to provide. They provide to organizations, nonprofits. And at the time, we were working very close together, trying to look at ways to approach anti-violence initiatives, trying to model what a coalitional approach will look like, where we had elected officials, we had not only the law enforcement community, we also had the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute that serviced a lot of the families that unfortunately lost their loved ones to violence. And we tried to have the people that were already working on the issue or dealing with the issue, all in a shared space to figure out a way we can hopefully minimize what was occurring in our community. And I believe that our approach was spot on because we created a space to listen to those that have been impacted by the issue of loss of life. We and at that time, us working together, I knew of fiscal sponsorship. So that's nonprofit, that's organizations that have not really been fleshed completely out, but are providing a service. So they need some support, and the way they can go about that is reaching out to a nonprofit and asking if they would be their fiscal sponsor. And because of the role you were in and what we were doing collectively, I asked for support, and you didn't hesitate to provide. So I was able to reach out to Toys for Tots, request toys to provide, and they fulfilled the order. The targeted population was the men we were working with at Bridgewater, their families that were on the outside. And, just going directly to those households to provide gifts to their children, their grandchildren, nieces, or nephews. And it was a surprise. They weren't expecting to receive. The joy that came over those children's faces when they seen the gifts, when I received the comments from the adults of, oh, this is from, my dad, my uncle, my loved one who's currently was doing a life sentence, it also gave them a sense of, I believe, hope that whatever led them to being where they're at, they were making positive use of their time. So I looked at all that, and it provided a high like no other. And from that, it became addictive. I said, if I can do this one year, let me see if I can make a request the following year. And I, because of the word getting around, I needed to request more because there were more people that were interested in gifts for the holiday. So each year the request grew. So the approach to being able to provide grew. We went from the going to drop toys at individual families' houses to creating an event, which you highlighted earlier, was the first physical event was at Mamleo, where we ended up not only providing gifts, but we provided arts and craft activities. We made it very festive for the children to really forget about being, the trials and tribulations that life have, and just enjoy being a child. So we established a practice that really focused on the children having that experience. So we didn't let people register and just come pick up a bag of toys and then go on about their business. Sometimes people would just jump from event to an event. There was actually a process that forced people to allow their children to benefit of all that was being explored on the day of. And so people, and we even created a system that was open to the public. At every year it was open to the public, but it was based on your order of arrival, the gift distribution. And we set the gift distribution at a designated time towards the end of the event. So you had two options. You could stay with your child, because the child was mandatory that they was present. You would have to stay with your child, let them be children, and enjoy all that was there to offer, or you could go home. You did not have to be there. One thing that we've learned over the years, unfortunately, the level of entitlement with those that are trying to provide and give back. That's why I stress that it's a volunteer-driven approach, that there is no compensation, so you can't come in and dictate how we go about giving and providing. And I think because we set that tone that I believe our community understands, there hasn't been any incidents of violence. It has grown to be one of, I believe, the largest community-driven events in the city. We're celebrating 14 years this year. I've been fortunate and blessed. I don't know if that's the right choice of words, given all the tasks that the operation entails, but I am intimately familiar with how the Toys for Tots operation works, and I'm just trying to bring in all appropriate parties to be involved in the actual execution of the operation, because what I believe the public sees is toys coming from this organization, but not knowing what the back end work entails. Where you stepped up even more so this year because you've always been supportive and involved, but recognizing that there's a lot of moving pieces in order to create an assembly line of toys coming in and toys going out to those that are requesting. And everything is donation, volunteer driven.
Right.
So how do you get people to actually participate when they're not being financially compensated is a skill. And I think that I've been able to get the right people in the space to see what can happen and see what can also not happen without the involvement, because I cannot continue to take on as much as I take on without community support, and I refuse to do that moving forward. So it's intentional reaching out to the community of saying Toys for Tots will not exist in the city of Boston if the community does not step up to make sure that there's an operation.
And to that point, Darren, and thank you for highlighting that, is that I think folks understand is that when you first started being in the operational side of it as well, is that they were down at Dry Dock and they had a space for a long time. A lot has changed since then, and actually within the past few years. So you don't have a location where you can house things year round like they kind of were able to do in the past, and then you have a smaller window of when you can get things in and out, because the space that's being utilized now has an expiration date to beginning and end. So explain to folks the need for what you need as far as gifts and things like that, and the age group and all that, but that you don't have the facility, and how, if they want to make a donation to you, whether it's to the Toys for Tots, whether it's in a financial way or however they can do so. Because I think it's important folks understand you're really working under a real tight window. I was at the meeting with you the other day, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a miracle if we can pull this off.
Yeah, definitely a Christmas miracle is looking like. So as you just highlighted, that the operation has been decentralized, meaning, at one point in time for numerous amount of years, it was located in the Dry Dock area of the Seaport District. And what has everyone from the city of Boston knows is that the Seaport District has been developed over the last... it's a whole nother community there, right?
Prime real estate now.
Prime real estate, and the space that Toys for Tots occupied was year-round, but there was no rent associated with that space. So, being the capitalist society that we live in, at times, folks start recognizing that, this space is not producing any revenue for the owners. And they were looking for ways to sever ties now that, things have been developed. And I want to shout out the Seaport District for housing Toys for Tots for as long as they did. Recognize there's progress, there's development, and folks are looking to, maximize their investment. I get it. But it left Toys for Tots without a home. And so what we ended up identifying is a new supporter, the Boston Convention Center. They offered us space to execute the operation, but as you just highlighted, it's only for a little over 4 weeks window of time. So from November 18th to December 23rd, the over 200 organizational requests that folks are reaching out, those need to be filled within 30 days, and they range in size of anywhere from 5 toys to 500 plus toys, right?
And Darren, not to cut you off, but to put that in perspective, to which when you were at Dry Dock, how much lead time did you have then compared to now? Because I think people need to understand what you're working on.
Yes, I have October to December. Okay. Now I have less than
30 days,
5 weeks to try to, and it's in the middle of a holiday, right? You have Thanksgiving that's approaching.
And the need hasn't gotten any less either, right?
The need is even greater now because of the hardship that has been experienced with the economy. We're still dealing with the residuals of COVID. We're the need is there. The requests are plentiful, but the volunteerism is going to have to be very strategic and tactical.
Okay.
That everything is based on timing. So November 18th is the first day that the convention center is allowing the operation to start. So after November 18th until December 23rd, people can drop toys off at the Boston Convention Center if they're interested in donating. But you and Cynthia, shout out to Cynthia Brewington from BPD, you all have been dropping donation boxes off at the local police stations, fire stations,
community center, community
centers, really trying to get the Toys for Tots collect donation boxes out to anyone and everyone that is looking for them, so that we can create the actual donations that need to come into the operation so we can fulfill the orders of those that have requested toys to serve their population of people. It's going to be a tight window. I think it's tighter than it's ever been before. And as you highlighted, my life is ever so busy. If folks only knew the amount of work that I'm now embarking on. I recently was promoted as the political director for the largest healthcare workers union in the nation. So I have also been requested to go to Georgia, as you was just talking about the Senate race. My life is very busy and occupied with things that I'm required to do.
That pay your bills. That pay your bills.
My bills are
right.
So
and most people, right, it's a volunteer. Right.
Right, and so to do Toys for Tots, I hope that people see that it's literally, I feel like it's something that I wanted to give back and didn't want to walk away from. That's why I wanted to acknowledge what Councilor Yancey has done for over 30 years with his book fairs, that I'm quite sure there's been trying times. The city was in disarray, but you started something and you know the benefit of continuing to do it. So I recognize that my removal right now, would be detrimental to the overall operation because of those that understand it have unfortunately faded away for a variety of reasons. Age, health, COVID, people have held it down, former Marines for years. So I do not want them to not be acknowledged. But unfortunately, there was no successorship plan. How do you keep this going if those individuals are no longer in play? And what happens when things have been decentralized and you have a tighter window of time to try to execute an operation?
And speaking of time, Dan, we've got about 3 minutes at this hour, and if you want to hang on after the break, that's up to you. But I don't want to monopolize your whole morning. I know you got a lot to go on, so if you want to.
Yes, the last thing I want to just say is please Google Greater Boston Toys for Tots. The website is being updated, but as of now, you can see all the ways to get involved, to donate. If you want to volunteer, you'll get all of the helpful information by Googling Greater Boston Toys for Tots.
And Aaron, how many volunteers would be optimal for you to execute this? Like I said, having such a short window, because I think people don't understand what a production this is.
I think the problem is that volunteerism has to do with actual work that can be done, right? So if there's no toys, there's actually no reason to volunteer. But if there's toys, it's going to be, I need all hands on deck. So it's literally trying to identify when toys are going to be there, how many toys, and bro, you have seen it can be about 300,000 toys at one point in time in there. So, and no slight to the upcoming holiday of turkeys and Thanksgiving, but as I say often publicly, toys are not turkeys, meaning it's not a one-size-fit-all. And they're not, so it's age and gender appropriate. So there's just a lot of more.
And what are the age groups that you guys cater to as well? Because I think
0 to 10.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. We all know that we are living in a technical and digital age. Those gifts get expensive. So we want to really focus on 10 and under because we recognize that the older children want more of the technical and digital toys that are costly and want to be conscious of that.
Oh, wow.
So 0 to 10.
Wow.
But please visit the Greater Boston Toys for Tots website to get any helpful information. I'm not too hard to find and will be of help. But again, I am not in charge. I am just a super volunteer. Yeah. This is a program of the United States Marine that benefits all of us here in the Greater Boston community that I would not want to see not in place for future years.
Well, Dan, like I said, I ran out of boxes, so I was texting you that I have to get back down there, to connect with the folks so I can pick up some more on Monday, so that I can do my part. I can't ask other folks to do if I'm not going to step up. That's why when you said, hey, you need more help, I said, look, whatever I can do, my brother, because you've always been there to support what I was doing, and I'd be remiss if I didn't return the favor. So I thank you for what you continue to do, and we'll keep highlighting that here on our broadcast as well. And hopefully, maybe a few minutes, or we'll record something that we can play on a regular basis on our broadcast from you. If you want to come in and record something, we'll put that out there. Again, my brother, thank you so much. And listen, let's talk sometime either this weekend or the early part of the week. Catch up on what you need as far as that and anything other that you need. Thank you for taking time this morning. Praise Radio. Appreciate you, brother. Take care. All right, folks. So that's going to do it for this hour. Man, 2 hours in the can already. Pastor Hobbs, thank you, sir. We're going to, I think we're coming up on our required break, and take our break. You've been listening at the Round Table with Mamleo. We're going to take our break, and we'll be right back.
That anything is possible as long as you work hard. Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard. So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog. I always dreamed I'd be on tour. Instead of laying dealers on the floor, sitting in the hole.
Listening to WBPG-LP 102.9 FM radio in Boston. We are located at 670 Washington Street in Dorchester, Massachusetts, zip code 02124. We are on this FM station from 2 a.m. to 9 a.m., Monday through Saturday, and 2 a.m. to 6 p.m.